Welcome back. I'm Teresa Bruno, the host of the Soul Talks podcast, and I'm here today with my friend Princess Thomas. She's been on the show before, but we have so many more viewers and followers than we did when Princess was on about a year ago. I just really wanted to tell her story again, and maybe differently, and maybe more, and also true vulnerability. It was the very first time I'd done a Riverside interview. And so I really felt like I was just kind of screaming at her the whole time. It was like I was trying to scream through the screen. But anyway, I'm delighted to have Princess here with me today. She's one of the closest people to my heart, and I know you're going to love her story. Hey.
Hey, I'm
so glad to have you here.
My friend, I'm so glad you invited me back.
Yeah, I'm just so glad to have you in person and not on Riverside.
I know.
That was a disaster. I was just screaming at you.
It's fine. I was screaming back. It worked.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's so nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Just so many things to talk about. You know, we just keep doing life together, you and me.
I know.
Right?
I know. And now it's year after year.
I know. Thank goodness. Thank goodness we're here.
I know.
You know where I wanted to start today? You have such an amazing story with your grandmother. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of wanted to step back into that piece. I know we've told that piece of your story before. It's such a beautiful testament to the power of the women who influence us, who shape us.
Right.
I'll tell you a funny story. This morning I got up and another friend of mine is going through an end-of-life situation with a woman she thinks of as her mother, but, you know, someone who basically raised her after she was orphaned, I think at about 3. And so, you know, prayerfully with her in what she's going through. And so I was texting her this morning. And I said, you know, and I'm smiling and you'll know why. I said, you know, I was one of the last people to be with my grandmother when she could still speak. And I laid in the bed with her, and the last time she was verbal was she was singing a hymn out loud at the top of her lungs. And it was that old Baptist hymn, He lives.
He lives.
He lives, he lives, da-da-da-da-da-da. Anyway, and I just laid there in the bed with her going, well, this is a way to go out.
This is the way.
But they had called me and told me that she was probably near death. And so James took the kids and I flew to Florida, and I had deliberately worn something bright because she loved bright colors. So I had on this kind of orangey cardigan, and it had pink sequins on the back. Jeans, you know, whatever. I walk in. Now, this woman is on her deathbed. I walk in, and she said, honey, even I could catch a man in that sweater.
She went out with a bang.
That was just before she sang her hymn, and that's the last thing she ever did.
Oh, my goodness.
But she was really such an elegant, wonderful woman, but always so aware of being attractive, you know, and she was widowed at 44.
Wow.
And never remarried. And I've thought so much about that as I've been through what I've been through in the last 5 years, how much harder even her journey had to be than mine, because she didn't know, she had never written a check, she didn't drive.
Right.
You know, she had 4 young children at home. I've drawn strength in my journey of the last 5 years, knowing that my grandmother went through that. But I did kind of want to start with, you know, I think the woman who was the most powerful in your world.
Right. So it's very interesting that you tell that story, because kind of going all the way to the end, it was just me and my grandmother there when she passed. But kind of going back to the beginning now, you know, she raised me by herself until I was 5 years old. And so, you know, anyone who knows anything about, you know, childhood, you know, and all the things, those are the formative years.
That's
right?
It, yeah.
And so, you know, I really feel like the person that she was, I didn't get all of it because she, you know, my grandma, she was just, amazing. But the person that she was, she definitely instilled all of that into me. Right. Some things, you know, I don't necessarily show all the time, but she instilled so much into me. And I'm a native of Columbus, Georgia. And, you know, she was the first of so many things. Right. And we're talking about the South. So, You know, she was the first Black female deputy sheriff in Columbus, Georgia.
That's
And,
crazy.
you know, I mean, she had so many roles, so many jobs. You know, she was the neighborhood crossing guard for the kids. She was obviously the deputy sheriff. She cut everyone's hair in like on the block in the neighborhood, specifically the boys, and all the boys were mad because everybody had the same haircut. And if you complained about it, you're getting it.
She's coming after you.
She's coming after you, right? I mean, she just did so many different things. She could fix anything. She had a garden. She would, you know, try to fix a car. I mean, she would do like so many different things, you know, and she was such a structured person. And
But was she soft with you?
so there were times when she was soft, right? When it was just like me and her, and she's, you know, if I didn't do something, for example, if I didn't, you know, do something in the way I felt like it needed to be done, and I felt as though I had failed, right? That's when she was like, "Oh, no, you tried, you won."
Oh, so she praised you, and she said
Absolutely.
it wasn't a failure.
Absolutely,
Because you know,
absolutely.
you are such a combination of strength and ferocity, and you never give up, and yet you are so tender. And you have two young children, you know, Peyton and Royce.
Yes.
And you're a lion mama. I've seen that. But I've watched you parent Peyton since she was what, 4?
Yeah, I mean, if not earlier, I mean, it's
3
you've
or
been around
4,
a
and
long
before
time.
Royce was born.
Yes, yes.
And you know, you are a tender mom.
Yeah.
And I've often wondered, you know, because you talk about your grandmother that way, but she was the primary maternal influence in your
Right.
life early
Right.
on. And I've wondered where you got that just amazing gentleness you
So
have
she
with your
was-
kids.
She was definitely stronger, and I don't want to say harsher, but very, very strong on the outside, but on the inside, she was so soft, right? She would give you the clothes off of her back. If there was someone in the street that needed something to eat, right? Now, if they're out there asking for money, she's not going to give money, but she'll go buy them something to eat, right? Make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But, you know,
Yeah.
so, I mean, she had the softest heart. I mean, she would give you anything. She would teach you anything, you know, and I truly think that especially that part I got from her, you know, like I said, a lot of people didn't see it, right? But I mean, I got all of that. I got the you know, the stronger parts. I got the softer, more feminine parts. You know, I got all the things, and I think she kind of tied it up in a little bow for me.
Yeah. Well, and
but-
you know, we don't have to go deep here, and you can tell me not to go. But your mom was around.
Yes.
You just didn't live with her.
Right. So the first 5 years, that's correct. It was just me and grandma. And then, you know, around year 5, my mom moved back to Columbus, Georgia, and then she became an integral part. So then I had 2 strong women, right? Now,
And I know your mom.
Yeah.
And I can attest to that.
oh yeah. You know, my
I
kids
do.
know. They're like, oh, here's Gigi. Yeah.
Glad it.
Yeah. I mean, and quite honestly, I think that she's firmer in many ways than my grandmother was. Although, you know, my grandmother was a physically strong person, right? I mean, she was, once again, she was a deputy sheriff. Like, she could body slam one of the guys. You know what I'm saying? Just saying. But, you know, I mean, there are things about my mom that I feel like are even like firmer,
Isn't that interesting?
which is very interesting because I, you know, at baseline, I'm not a just raw kind of person, right? Now, you know, there are situations that may, you know, that may lead me down that road, but like just in general, you know, I feel like I got the softer parts of them, particularly my grandmother. So,
And you know, the part that I just adore about the story, and I keep, it's like you can't tell it to me enough times. You know, here you are, just this celebrated breast surgeon. You have 2 clinics, one in Charlotte and one in Birmingham. They are solely owned by you. You're only 41 years old.
41?
You know, and you were the first female African American fellow at Yale in breast surgery, correct?
Right. Yeah.
You know, Princess, that doesn't just like happen at 17
Right.
or 18. You don't just get that drive then, I don't think.
Right. No.
And, you know, there were, whether you see it that way or not, because the way you always tell me your story, you don't see obstacles in your way. And
Right.
I look back and I go, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
you were mostly raised by your grandmother. You don't have a two-parent home. You're from
Right.
Columbus, Georgia, a little tiny small town in the South that isn't,
Right.
probably elevating kids to be surgeons and to go to Yale.
Right.
That was
Right.
unusual. Maybe there were a few, but
Very unusual.
that was not the norm.
Right. Right.
And you're an African American female in a time when it's not easy. And I've heard your story, and you never tell it that way. But so I have to go, what happened so that you always saw what was good about this?
My
Not
grandma
what
did
was
it.
hard. I know.
She did it, and she was
I
born
love
in the
that so
late
much.
30s. So if she was born in the late 30s and was able to do all of this and be all the things and be the first Black X, Y, and Z, surely it was way harder than her, for her,
Well,
I should
sure.
say. So why can't I do it, right? Like, it should be relatively easy for me. And I feel like I have the gumption, right? I have like all the things that have been instilled in me by both my mom and my grandmother that, yeah, and even if I'm not the first, be the best.
Oh,
You
I
know?
love that. Yeah. Be
Right?
the
And it's
best.
okay if you're not the first. It's fine. And you're going to fail multiple times. That's fine. But you only fail if you stop.
And I
So,
love that, and I
you know.
believe it. And I, at this point in my life, I have failed quite a few times. I've had some great successes, but boy, I've had some big old failures. And I was on a podcast the other day, and this guy said, he's a young guy, he's probably 28 years old.
Yeah.
Does a beautiful job with what he's doing, and he sent me 3 questions to be prepared on, and it was, what are the 3 things that have taught you, the most about being an entrepreneur, about success, blah, blah, blah. And I said, all 3 are failures.
Absolutely.
I pull from my biggest failures, and they make me work harder. They make me try again. They make me get back up. But you do tell your story from the point of what's good about this, not what was hard about this.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. If you didn't fail, your successes wouldn't be so great, right? At least to you.
To me, yeah.
Right?
And the very fact that you get up again when it's really hard, when you've been, canceled on social media, it's hard to get back up again.
Yeah.
It's
But
hard
if you
to start
win
out.
all the time and never have any failures, then it's like, it's just another win. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
So tell me about a failure.
I mean, I had to take the MCAT, the medical college admissions test, I think 3 times.
That's not a failure. You kept trying.
But it could have been. As a matter of fact, when I got those results back that said whatever low score it was, I was like, oh goodness, what do I report this? What do I do? You know what I'm saying? So like, oh man, this is an F. Like if we were in school, this would be a D minus F, right? So I'm like, okay, well, let's go back and see where the deficiencies are, and then let's try again. Let's do a course. Let's do, all the things. And so going back to my grandmother, and I may have told you this story before, but when I was in 3rd year, going into 4th year of undergrad, I was in a car accident.
Oh, please, no, just slow down. Tell all the details.
All the details.
This is like my bedtime story.
Yeah.
I love this
This
so
is
much.
it. This
Okay.
is it. So I had just won Miss Tuskegee University. Okay. So once again, this was end of 3rd year. This is Memorial Day weekend. End of 3rd year going into my senior year of undergrad. And, traditionally, when school was over, like when you got out for a holiday, okay, you come home. You're not staying and partying for the weekend, right? So this particular time, my mom and grandma said, okay, you can stay 1 extra day. Here I am. So I stayed an extra day, had partied, had such a good time, and did not get much rest. So the next morning, once again, this is that Memorial Day weekend. The next morning, I get up and I'm trying to get home because they're telling me it's about to be a big storm. You need to get home. So I go, oh my gosh. So I'm driving home, probably less than 5 minutes from the house. I fall asleep, run into a tree. I woke up on the stretcher. Fast forward a couple days in the hospital, multiple broken bones. And once again, we're talking about like end of May. So we're coming up on summer, and I was signed up for a medical course at the Medical College of Georgia in Augusta for that summer. And so all of these are kind of, all right, you need to do all these prerequisites, if you will, to try to, boost your resume and all this to get into medical school. And so I was already signed up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have a cast on both arms.
Both arms.
Both arms.
You broke
Meaning
both arms.
both. both. So
Oh,
I am like, this is humbling. So now my mom and grandma have to wipe my butt. There's that. Let's just start
Literally.
there, says a
Literally.
college student, right? And so, but I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Like this, this thing is coming up in 2-3 weeks. And, my grandmother says, well, I guess I'll just have to go with you. And I'm like, what is that? What? So she came with me and she stayed with me for the summer.
Oh.
We had dorms and all that. She stayed with me. She helped me with my book bags, getting them to class. Everything.
Dressed you.
Everything.
Fed
Bathed
you.
me, wiped me. It's grandma, baby. It's grandma. And so the only caveat was they said, okay, for the last test of the summer, which is, you can't tell her what your answer is and she pencil it in. You have to do it.
How could you do that with a broken arm?
So grandma said, okay, the test is on such and such date. So you need to start practicing with these fingers because we need to, by the time we get to this date, you have to take this test. I'm here helping you now, but you have to take the test. They said you have to take the test. You have to take the test. You're here. You're going to take the test and you're going to excel.
Okay. Yes,
Boom.
ma'am.
Boom.
And so with a cast,
Yeah.
you're learning to
honey,
scribble.
Thankfully, those little ovals are real small. So, honey, the skills were woo.
Oh my gosh.
So, but she stayed with me for the summer
But
and did
princess-
everything for me like I was a baby.
It's like, so few people today have that kind of support. And even economically have where a parent or a grandparent
Right.
can stop working to go with you if something like that happens. You just don't hear stories like that.
No. But once again, we're talking about a lady who had multiple jobs, did everything. And honey, she had so much money saved up.
I love that.
So she could, if my granddaughter needs me, whoever needs me, right? She was there. And so, I thank God that I was able to complete all of my training, fellowship included, and be a real doctor before she passed, right? So I think that was like one of the biggest things. So,
well, and we have to map back to this because she was so pivotal in, you've told me stories like she would say, you'd come home from school and she'd be like, you want to be a doctor? You don't go play outside. You get in here and get your homework done.
That's
it was
right.
that kind of thing all the time.
That's right.
Once you said, I have this dream, then she was going to pave it out for you.
oh, absolutely. We had a chalkboard in the back room, right? In the spare bedroom, there was, good old fashioned chalkboard. I was in there doing math problems.
Oh my
And this is obviously early on. This is probably early 90s. We had a, old school computer. If you needed it, it was there. It was there. So, thankfully, financially, right? She was in a great place, and she was able to.
And that's so unusual.
Very
An
much
African American female. I know she was married,
right,
to your grandfather, but he was no longer with you.
right. Well, he was long distance because he was in the he's retired, but he was in the military, and so he was still like living out of town, and so she really did all of it by herself.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know we've told the story before, but as I said, we have so many more viewers and followers now. I think it's so important to tell the story and of how you decided to become a doctor.
Right. So quite honestly, I have wanted to be a doctor since I was 5. Once again, keep in mind, I was with her from 1 to 5. So I don't know what happened in those 5 years to even take me there. There are no physicians in my family, right? Even now. But I've wanted to be a doctor since I was 5. And it really was one of those things where, we went to the doctors and we got our shots and we got our checkups and I was never scared. And even the doctors were like, all right, well, I'm going to sit you here between my legs. I'm going to have to hold you. And I'm like, just give me a lollipop. You know what I'm saying? Like, get the shots so we can get out of here and get back to school, right? So, I was just never scared. And that's the only thing I've ever wanted to be. So fast forward, my grandmother would take my great-grandmother to the doctor for her appointments. And so she started seeing a cardiothoracic surgeon for, some medical issues. And so one day, and I think this was like maybe middle school, he sat down and his name was Dr. Philip Brewer. He's still alive, which is so amazing.
Hi, Dr. Brewer.
But he asked me, well, hey, kid, you know what you want to be when you grow up? Yes, sir. I want to be a doctor. I was like, well, what kind of doctor? And I'm like, what do you mean what kind of doctor?
Isn't being a doctor enough?
Is the answer.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, well, I don't know. And he was like, well, have you thought about doing surgery? And I was like, no. And then he went on to tell me, what he does. He's, heart and, vascular surgeon and all that. And I was like, well, that sounds pretty cool, And so needless to say, he said, well, hey, if you're, what kind of grades do you make? I'm like, well, sir, I make all A's. You see this lady right here? I make all A's, He's like, well, if you're really serious about it, I would love to kind of show you what I do, and you can come to the operating room with me.
You're only in like the 8th grade.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay. I don't know what I'm signing myself up for, but let's do it, baby.
And I have to take a pause here.
Yeah.
You don't, this is another place you tell your story very differently than I, from the outside, think it had to in some ways be.
Right.
But how incredibly beautiful is it that this white doctor in Columbus, Georgia, reaches out to this very bright little 8th grade girl and offers her to come look at surgery with him.
The fact that you even had a conversation with me to ask me, hey,
right?
Kid, what do you want to be
what
when you grow up?
What an amazing man. I want more of him in our world.
You actually took the time to talk to the great-grandchild of your patient. Let's just start there. And we all know now with medicine, quite honestly, time is money.
Right.
You took the time to ask me a question that led to my future. Is that not amazing?
Beyond amazing. It's one of the most beautiful stories I've ever heard. So tell me what it was like going into surgery.
Oh, honey. So here we go. Had a couple of a couple little speed bumps here. But so when listen, I will forever tell this story. I will forever. So we go in the operating room, and of course he's telling me, okay, you have to put on a hat, have to put on a mask, put on little shoe covers, get her scrubs, and then he says, all right, now you're gonna stand here. You're not gonna touch anything. You're gonna watch. We'll talk about it afterwards. And he would kind of talk through some things as he's going and that kind of thing. But he had me standing up at the top, the head of the bed, right where anesthesia typically is. And so I'm kind of looking over the drain.
And this is open heart surgery.
This is open heart surgery. The whole crank thing.
I couldn't do it.
The whole thing. And I'm like,
and you're in the 8th
whoa. Boom. I pass out. Boom. So I wake up and I'm in his office. He's like, hey, kid, you all right? You all right? I'm like, I'm trying to figure out where I am. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm fine. All right, you want to go back in there? Yes, sir. So I go back in there, and I think maybe
just again.
Yeah.
Most people would have just let her go. She's not.
This is not for her. Right?
Yeah.
Went back, passed out again. No. Look, at this point, how many strikes before you get out, right? But he believed in me. Somebody he did not know.
This is just.
I
just can't even say how extraordinary I think this is.
So much so, like, over the years, I would go over to his house and check on him and his wife. And, just kind of like as things progressed and, I got a little older, even before medical school. But just to, like, let him know how thankful I was. He really... He opened a lane. Yeah. That I quite honestly don't know. I don't know if that would have happened if I had never met him.
Right.
It's so funny how God lines things up.
I know. And I'm sure
it's a God thing.
Pay that forward all the time too. Mm-hmm. I bet he was one proud man when you graduated from medical school.
I think so. But I'll never forget he has those like big glasses and he's just like a surgeon, right? Just the typical surgeon that you would see on TV. Just who you would imagine a surgeon to be, but he asked a young black girl, hey, what do you want to be?
And I've asked you this so many times, and you have never faltered in your answer to me, and I just can't even believe it. I've said, where did you feel a point of distinction? Where did you feel like you were different? Where did you feel like you were discriminated against? Good, it's about time.
About time.
All these years.
I know.
But you always say, I didn't feel discrimination.
Right. We've had this conversation.
And you absolutely don't back up from that.
No.
Which I got to say again, I want more stories like yours.
Yeah.
And I want to create stories like yours.
Right.
But look what happened. I'm not saying Dr. Brewer was, responsible for your success, but he certainly showed you that you could do it, that he believed in you. And he didn't see color.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I think that may be why I never saw or never felt discrimination, because this is an older white doctor, very distinguished, who took my hand.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, you've shown me grace, right?
Yeah.
In
a town that was pretty racially divided.
Absolutely.
And still is, to some extent.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. I do believe I remember you, me saying, so, I pushed you on it a couple of times in our conversations, and I've said, well, when did you feel it? There's no way you got through without feeling it. Fast forward to, was it medical school? It was before you went to Yale.
So, in medical school, I went to a historically black medical school, Meharry Medical College in Nashville, so definitely not there. But then I went to the Medical Center of Georgia for my general surgery residency. And I was the first black female general surgery resident, right? So, and at that time, although a great accomplishment, it was like, why? Like and at that time, that was 2010, and so in the year 2000, how in the world, am I the first black general surgery resident, in a program that has been probably around since like the 70s, So, and I still really didn't feel discrimination there.
It was just an awareness.
It was an awareness of, oh, interesting. Okay. All right. Moving on.
Which is kind of how you do things. Moving on.
And then really same thing. Then, fast forward to breast fellowship at Yale, same situation. But even more so then, and this is 2015, it's like there's only one fellow a year. So, it may take a little while to get an African-American here. Here I am.
And not just African-American, but female.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of broke through all the barriers. Yeah. That's, I don't know if you do this very much, but I hope you celebrate that.
Maybe I need to start, because I really don't even think about it much, to be honest, Teresa.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
Right. So I finished fellowship in 2016. My grandmother passed in 2017. So just over a year after I finished, right? So I was out in practice for a year, right, prior to her passing. So, but she was able to see me live out my dream, and so I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
Next week on the Soul Talks, Princess shares what it was like to juggle Yale, motherhood, and heartbreak, and how faith carried her through.